Yes, good. Good. It's nice to be here again with you all. I thought I would just start this evening just with a prayer that came to me. Lord, may my life be a prayer to you, a blessed prayer, a holy prayer. Guide me. May your highest will flow through me, your highest truth, your highest wisdom. May your voice be my voice. May your actions be my actions. We love you so much, Lord, and bow eternally in humility to your grace, your intelligence, your wisdom, your way. For we trust and know it is the highest. It is the highest. And so, yes, so good to be here with you all again this week. I have a bunch of announcements. I'll see if I can get through them. Next week, Sunday, I think it's the 22nd, I'm going to be on retreat. I'll be out at Christ in the Desert. It's a monastery down in New Mexico. So I'll be hanging out with the monks, just doing a solo silent retreat for myself personally. If any of you are interested, I'll be teaching at the Science and Non-Duality Conference October 23rd through the 27th. And I'll be offering a couple different talks. One, I'm going to be on a panel with Rick Archer, Mariana Kaplan, Jack O'Keefe, and some others speaking about ethics and spirituality. I'll also be speaking about the shadow and how our shadow interacts with our spiritual path. Excuse me. And working with the shadow, healing, so that we don't have a giant obscuration that's veiling our true nature. I will also be hosting a teachers meeting for any spiritual teachers out there. That's free and open to the public. And by that, I mean it's open to teachers who want to come. And the idea is to get teachers to come together and to share, to meet in a place of humility, in a place of transparency. There's all those details are on my website. Excuse me. Okay, so no satsang the 22nd of September. Let's see what else. Oh yes, I do have a retreat in the works, that I'll be teaching. And I'm sorting that out right now. My mother's going to have surgery this winter, and I'm going to take care of her. And so I just need to find a date from her doctor. And so a lot of you have been wondering what the holdup is, and I'm working on it. I'm just need to get her surgery schedule first. Let's see what else here. Oh yes, for all of you who have been emailing questions, I deeply appreciate those. I read them all. Do your best to be concise. It's an incredible art. It truly is a spiritual practice to just be clear about what your question is. See if you can reduce your question to 2 or 3 sentences. I'm struggling with this and I'm wondering about that. Whatever it is, just see if you can make it short and sweet. When you write a really long, complicated email, I want you to notice the nature of your mind as you're writing and wanting to, state all the details. The details often are unnecessary. They're not the important part. So can you get clear about what the question is? Get clear and surrender the details. Surrender all the details. And so work with that. It's a great skill about being concise, having discernment. What is it that my question really is? Oftentimes what you'll find is if you're really clear, the question disappears. For those of you who English is a second language and you're writing me emails, forgive me if I don't understand your English. American English is different than European English and different than, what they teach in South America or in Eastern Europe or Asia. And so a lot of times I can't decipher what you're trying to say. So be concise, be exact, and read it out loud to see if you understand what you're asking, if it makes sense. If you have all the subject and the verbs and the nouns and all that stuff in there, so it makes sense for me. And I appreciate you trying to speak English, because I know I'm not good at speaking other languages. Another thing I'd like to do is just invite everyone again to the Wednesday meditation group. This is a powerful time for all of us to go inward, to be silent together, and receive a very profound transmission. And so I'm going to personally invite you all, if it works with your time zone, to join us in that. And for those of you who listen to these satsangs, at a later date, please, leave me a little comment, a like, a subscribe, all that good stuff, so I know who's out there, and just write me a little note and let me know that you're tuning in, that you're connecting with the Sangha. I often get these throughout the day, just little notes, and they make me smile. And it's a reminder that the Sangha is growing and we're doing good work. So my heart's with you. Last thing on the list is just a big thank you for all the donations. And if anyone wants to make a contribution, you can visit my website. And there's a donate link there. Deeply appreciate it. And so what I thought I'd speak about tonight, because I had received a lot of questions about surrender, is what it means to truly surrender. Truly surrender. And to truly surrender, we must be willing to let go of our mind, let go of the ego, and listen to the heart, listen to the will of God, listen to the silent intelligence, which is here. Now, our egoic nature is normally the loudest voice in the space of awareness. When you're struggling with something, I'm inviting you to listen to the most silent voice, the voice of the heart, the voice of the truth. I can't remember, but one of my teachers, said to me, Craig, we all know the truth. Every single one of us, it's within us. Being awake is the willingness to listen to that truth. Not the loud voice in the mind, not the ego, not the pain body, but the quietest voice, the most humble voice, the prayer-like voice within your consciousness. When you listen there, you'll find the truth is very simple. Being awake is very simple. Living from ego is to be connected with hell, confusion, division, all kinds of craziness. So, excuse me. So another thing I'd like to speak about a little bit more deeply is about these three areas of being. The Buddha spoke about them often. We can exist on a mental, emotional, body, mind, or mental, emotional level. That's one way, like an egoic level. And most people live in this state. This is what the Buddha called samsara, the dream state. When we live in a way where we're simply connected with our mind, our thinking, our pain. But spirituality is really about taking this step out of that mind. And one of the big steps we take is into the subtle energetic body. And so if we can step out of the thinking mind, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through philosophy, whether it's through yoga, any type of spiritual practice, mantra practice, and come into the subtle energetic body. In the subtle energetic body are the 7 chakra centers, where you feel that the space of awareness is big. It's not just one point in the mind. It includes the entire body, the entire physical body, and even beyond the edges of that. And so within the subtle energetic body are the 7 chakras, and those are all wonderful worlds to explore. There are also wonderful worlds that tend to be flooded with karma, flooded with congestion, flooded with pain and suffering, confusion, old pain, our cellular memory, trauma, confusion. And so as we step out of the thinking mind as our identity, we can come into the second level of being, the subtle energetic body. And right away, you notice that you'll feel more free, more spacious. You'll feel this vibrating light and luminosity within your nature. And so oftentimes when I teach, my work is about helping people to step out of their thinking mind, their egoic nature, and to come into contact with the subtle energetic body. And then once we are in contact with that, to be awake, to be aware, to notice where is their pain, where is their congestion, where is their karmic habits and confusion. And so most of my days are spent working with clearing the karmic congestion, the habits, the pain that gets stuck here. And as we clear these more and more, there's a third type of being that wakes up. This is what I call the ground of being. The ground of being. Where you are being everything and nothing simultaneously. The mind becomes irrelevant. The physical body becomes irrelevant. The ground of being is this incredible space, this incredible presence, just pregnant with all of life. It's luminous, it's radiant, it's not restricted just to this body, this form. You literally feel as if you are creation. Creation. All manifest and all unmanifest. Now most individuals don't make it this far because they're busy tripping over their thinking mind, their emotional nature. And they're not willing to surrender. They're not willing to let go. And so the doorway into this greater progression is quite simple. It's about surrendering that which is lesser, that which is obsolete. Obsolete. The beautiful thing about the ground of being is it's always already here. It's eternally here. This ground is your birthright. All of you are destined to wake up, truly. Now, whether it's in this lifetime or not is dependent upon how deep you surrender. And so just to make this very practical, we look at these three realms of being that the Buddha described, if you're tripping over something in your thinking mind, you will feel pain in your body, agitation, irritability. Can you let go of this? Can you let go of this? Whatever it is you're tripping over. And sometimes letting go means to put it down. Other times letting go means stepping forward, stepping into a new consciousness. So some people, when they work with anger, for example, they have trouble, letting go of it because it's such a fire, it's such a heat. And so when you work with anger, first you notice your thoughts. That's one way of being. Your emotions, that's in that same level of being. But if you take a step back and just feel into your body, feel where the anger is living, and give the anger permission to flow and empty out of you, you'll find some of the anger will empty out, but some of the anger wants to be directed into swift, decisive action, into a change in life, leaving a relationship or starting a new one, saying yes to something, letting go of fear, but stepping into something simultaneously. So sometimes surrender requires we let go, but often surrender also requires that we step forward. More and more, as you listen to the truth of your being, and you become awake and intuitive and sensitive, and the subtle energetic body is awake, and we're noticing these energies just flowing through us, so they're not becoming congested. They're not getting stuck within our consciousness. As you do this, as you let energy flow, basically you're doing training. You're coming to an understanding of God's will, divine will, in you as you. Energy just wants to flow. God's will wants to flow through you as you. And so as you learn to work with the subtle energetic body, and you begin to learn how to work with energy, letting go of that which does not serve you, that which is congested, and just let it empty out. Let the surrender naturally take place. What you'll notice is this practice of surrender, of true surrender, is what's required for you to step into the third way of being, which is the ground of being. The ground of being, where you notice surrender is natural. You don't have to think about it. Your thoughts and God's thoughts become one. Your emotion, your truth, and God's truth is one. In you as you. In you as you. And there's an incredible intelligence to this. An incredible love to this. Someone emailed me, Wesley, about this question of, well, I'm afraid to truly surrender into God's will, because how do I know that it will be good? When we start to wake up, and through the law of oneness, we start to experience ourselves as both a saint and a dinosaur, a saint and a murderer, and everything in between. Because when we truly wake up, you see that you're one with all of life, that all of creation is within you. And so you see this, you notice this. You notice it in the cells of your body. You notice it in thoughts that you see in meditation. But there's an intelligence here that's driving this force. And as you surrender that which is lesser and step into that which is greater, you fall into alignment with God's will. The ground of being starts to live through you as you. It's a whole different type of experience where you don't think about being good or bad. Action simply happens. And the action tends to be very good, very holy, very holy. And if you are surrendering to God's will and your actions are, inherently negative, that's actually surrendering to ego, to the movement of ego. God's will is radically intelligent, radically divine. And so the great question is, do you trust? And that's the avenue, that's the tool that helps us to awaken, out of our humanness, the first level of being, into the subtle energetic bodies. Do you trust that there's a greater way of living, a greater mind? So when you let go of just one little thinking mind and you step into the truth, of the subtle energetic body, you'll find there's 7 minds there, and each of them have some level of divine intelligence to them. The intelligence in the gut is different than the intelligence in the throat. With each chakra center is a doorway, is a gate, an opportunity to awaken to an unclaimed aspect of divinity. And so as you awaken in each of these centers, what you find is a greater life, but it's through trust. You have to trust that it's okay to let go of the thinking mind. It's okay to let go of the super ego. Like the question about, do I trust that if I surrender to God's will, that will be a good will? That's really a question about our superego. Are we willing to trust that it's okay to let go of my superego, my manager, that's trying to keep me on the straight and narrow? Do I trust that the heart of humility can guide me forward? The heart of humility, the intelligence of grace. So can we surrender into this and allow this grace, this intelligence, this humility to flow through our consciousness? And as we do so, more and more, to the degree that we surrender, we discover this ground of being, which is radically impersonal. It's you don't really feel much like a human anymore. You feel like a force of creation. A force of creation. It's a radical shift. A radical shift. Okay, so there's a lot of questions. Let me see if I can get to them. Wesley writes, because of a recent trauma and lifelong hurts, the body is filled with near constant fear and anxiety. The mind no longer understands most teachings. Only peace and not peace. Only love and not love registers. Hard to introspect right now with so much fear. Yeah, the big thing when we have, tremendous fear is for you to find a place within your consciousness that you do trust. Now, Wesley, from working with you, I know you have a very beautiful heart. And so when we're faced with fear, and fear can be just like a screaming anxiety, I invite you to bring your attention just to your gentle heart, to your gentle heart, and hold on to it for dear life. Step into it. Say yes to your heart. And notice the fear burn up, and it will. It's just a matter of time. Now, one of the things that happens on this path, especially when dealing with fear and anxiety, is we're learning how strong our heart is. But we're also learning about God's time. So in the human mind, we might have an idea. If I take 3 breaths and I let go, then the fear should dissolve. If I say a mantra, the fear should dissolve. If I stand on my head and do some yoga asanas, the fear should dissolve. But sometimes God is teaching us about God's time. And so sometimes God brings forward things and makes them unusually difficult for long periods of time, so we can learn about God's time. God's time teaches us that we are not the boss. We're not in control. It's a ruthless teaching, but once you wake up and step into it, surrender to the depth of just this knowledge, this experience that God is the boss, you'll find great freedom in this. Great freedom in this. Some things just wear down our ego, and it's meant to be that way. Sometimes things stick around unusually long. And when that happens, it's our job. It's our job to make our life about healing, and to make ourself, our body, our trauma, the most important person on the planet, and love ourselves completely and unconditionally. It's a tall order, but this is what God asked for. This is what God asked for. Okay. Here's another question. This is from Brett. Is spirituality a necessary lens to view awakening? If not, then my central structure of meaning, spirituality, might collapse on me. Brett, no, you don't have to have a spiritual identity. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. But of course, this all has to do with, well, what do you mean by spirituality as the lens? It can be helpful to have a lens. It can be helpful to have a map. But you could have the lens of science, the lens of art, the lens of beauty. Some people wake up and they don't even know to call it spiritual awakening. They just know their mind is clear and awake. Some artists, they just sit down and before they paint, they feel this flow come over them, this surrender, this depth of being. As a musician, you might experience this as well, that you let the music take over you. And you start to wake up out of mind, out of emotional nature. You don't have to call it anything, but it can be helpful, just like with anything, to have a map. And spirituality, if it's a good spirituality, is simply a map. Simply a map. It's helpful to have a map. It's helpful to have a teacher. A lot of people email me really confusing, complicated questions with all kinds of variables, and it's helpful to have a teacher, a guide, a friend, a sangha, a community. It's helpful. It's helpful. Without this, we can just kind of spin in circles When I was quite young, about 14 years old, maybe even 13, I started to have incredible spiritual experiences, and I didn't really know what they were. And, my mind tried to make sense of them, and it would trip over things. It would come up with wild theories about what was happening in my consciousness. And then, when I read my first book, on Buddhism, and read the Bhagavad Gita, it's like, oh yeah, I know what's happening here. And so it's helpful to have a map, Okay, so a bunch of questions here, so I'm going to do my best to get through them. This one's from someone else named Craig. And so Craig writes, I felt called to come to your satsang. I'm an ardent follower of Adya. Gut level awakening happened in December 2013. Today was a day of abject suffering, lots of sobbing. All is not well in the material egoic world. Yet pure spirit has never known sorrow, never been touched by anguish, quietly waiting for only if we would surrender to its loving grace. Can you speak to how suffering is truly our best teacher, please? Yeah, Craig. One of the things that I used to wonder is, why is there suffering? And from one perspective, I realized, well, we gave birth into an evolutionary world. And when we know the rules of this world, like how the world works, the path is much easier. And so for many of us, suffering is our greatest teacher. Now, if we are awake to what suffering is simply the movement of God's intelligence. It's trying to show us what does not work, and that there's another way. There's another way. There's an incredible intelligence to suffering. If you feel into the heart of pain itself, if you feel beyond the screams, like the initial scream, you'll see there's a truth there in the suffering. When you feel into anger, you discover power. When you discover, the truth in fear, there's an incredible excitement for life, an incredible radiance. That impermanence is the truth of this realm. By that I mean everything is falling away, everything is dissolving. When you truly feel into the experience of fear, it feels as if you're free falling through space. Yet the good news is there's no ground that you're going to hit. On the surface level, fear is the thought, well, I'm going to hit the ground and it's going to hurt. But if you give yourself permission to free fall through space, you discover that fear itself is teaching us about the groundless ground, about the freedom of impermanence. Anger teaches us about power, about discernment, about how big we truly are. Because when you feel into anger, truly let go into it, you see it's huge. It's like the Almighty, it's huge. That may seem really paradoxical to speak about anger in that way. And of course, I'm speaking about the direct experience of anger. I'm not talking about walking into a bar and being egoically big and getting in a fight with someone who looks at you silly. And so, yes, Craig, one of the things that I discovered when I truly let go and let all these emotions flow through my nervous system, I was greatly thankful for the suffering. See, suffering was the very thing that helped to wake me up through embracing the pain, not avoiding it, not distracting, falling on my knees and saying, yes, yes, it hurts, it's difficult, but yes, instead of no. And when you say yes, you notice there's a great freedom there, a great power and intelligence. So yes, beautiful question, my friend. Okay. So here's a question. And I always get this name wrong. I butcher it, so please forgive me. Sanatha. Recently, she writes, recently, I've had many issues about disrespect, manipulation, and insults toward me. Before I have used an impulsive reaction like a big explosion from my hara. Rage used to show me a way of destruction that many times seemed fair. Now I'm feeling more and more a sense of time and space inside before I answer, before I respond to others. Which is the most coherent way to respond in the case of abuse? Thank you. Well, the big thing with abuse is, boundaries are necessary. Boundaries are in the realm of intelligence. And so if, you're struggling with someone abusive in your life, I encourage you to leave the situation, leave the relationship. If the abuse goes on and on. Before you leave, you can try to have a good heart-to-heart conversation. You can try to go to therapy. If it's a couples thing, couples counseling. If it's a family thing, family therapy. Get some support. Find a mediator. Find a good friend. But if you've tried this and the person is still abusive, then leave. If it's physical abuse, of course we leave first and foremost. Mental, emotional abuse, you try to talk it out with the individual when you're not angry. Find a good moment when both parties are clear and calm. But if you cannot do this, we must leave. We must set boundaries. We're not meant to come to planet Earth and just get beat up eternally. Now, all of us, will experience some level of suffering. Of course, when it's between 0 and 18, a lot of us don't have a choice. After 18, it's like, yeah, let's get out of the house and have our own life. But after you're 18, we must remember we are an adult. We're in control of our body. Someone's being abusive. You leave, you say no, you stand up. And you must listen in your heart. If this true abuse, I don't remember just like letting go and forgiving. I recommend leaving and then letting go and forgiving. But forgiveness means I don't want to carry this within me any longer. It doesn't mean what they did was right. We can admit it was the wrong thing what happened. It wasn't a movement of truth. It was a movement of confusion. And so this is a great question. So within your hara, I encourage you to find a freedom, a place within you which has never been harmed. Like Craig was writing about, a place within you that knows no sorrow. But leave first and then discover this place. Discover there's something within you that's indestructible. Indestructible. This is the truth of the hara. The emotional truth of the hara tends to be anger or shutting down. But the real truth of the hara is indestructibility. And sometimes we get beat up by life. And then the invitation is, after we've left the situation, is to discover there is something here that knows no sorrow. something here indestructible, the very ground of being. It's not harmed by anything. But in regards to your human body, your human mind, if you're in a dangerous situation, please leave. Please leave. Okay, here's another question here. This is from Anatol. Dear Craig, he has 3 questions. How to embrace pain, especially chronic pain, for which I've had for decades. I'm with you, Anatol. I've had chronic pain for decades myself. And so it's something I've had to learn to have some level of mastery with. And let me speak about mastery with chronic pain. If we're going to be awake, we have to be willing to feel and experience what's here right now. So chronic pain, if it's persistent, I encourage you to make love with this pain. And let me describe what I mean by that, because that may sound a little crazy. That you become radically intimate with the pain, close to the pain. You open to the pain. You surrender to the pain. You say yes to it, truly and completely. And so the basis of this, to make it very practical, is you feel it, the texture of the pain, the heat, the coldness, the tightness, the tension, the immensity of it. And then take a deep breath and let go into it. What you'll discover is the pain oftentimes will go from being, like a clenched fist. It will break and it will open. It will become fluid. And it will feel like grace. It's something that has surprised me many times throughout my life, especially because I work with pain on a daily basis. That if I stop completely and feel into the pain, I can discover Satchitananda there. Spaciousness and intelligence, a peace, a bliss. And by bliss, I mean all feeling has a radiance to it, a luminosity. Everything does. Everything is made a Satchitananda. And this is what the chronic pain is inviting for you. It's saying, hey, I'm here. Will you wake up? Will you breathe into me? Will you not turn away or distract or run or look here or there or whatever it is that people do? Will you feel me and experience me directly? And in this pain, you will find incredible strength, freedom, unconditional love. And it's a incredible opportunity, even though it's ridiculously difficult. Okay, beautiful. So the next part, how to surrender. That's the second part of his question. When we speak about that, I want you to imagine that surrender with pain is all about feeling. Are you willing to feel that which you don't want to feel? Are you willing to let go of your story that this pain should not be here? Nothing wrong with that story, but it doesn't help. The truth is the pain is here. So can you let go of your thoughts about pain and simply experience it directly? Directly. And for those of us, his third part of his question, for those of us who have not yet had a non-dual awakened experiences, how to awaken? Yes, my friend, well, this is what I've been speaking about tonight, is how to awaken. Let go of your thoughts as your egoic identification, as who you know yourself to be. And until I see you each week, for meditation, I know your pain is there. But what I'm going to invite you to do is to notice, to experience, to open into the beauty and the innocence of your heart. Can you notice yourself, experience yourself as that gentle presence that you are? That sweetness and love. Get to know this. This is how we all awaken. It's through letting go of the wounded part of ourselves, the angry part of ourselves, the jealous, the enraged part of ourselves, and through stepping into the innocent aspect of ourselves. Feel into the quietest presence of your being. The quietest presence. Okay, beautiful. Okay, a lot of questions here, and let me see if I can continue going forward here. Here's a question. Craig, I tried to surrender, but due to the fear, I missed my opportunity to truly awaken. So we live in an evolutionary world. And the beautiful thing about evolution is if you fail at life in one moment, you will be given another 1,000 opportunities to try again, to try again. You know, I failed, with spiritual awakening countless times. I had countless opportunities. I would have an incredible insight, a huge breakthrough, an incredible non-dual moment. And then the next moment later, my ego would get the best of me. I would trip over myself. I would be busy chasing, a relationship or whatever it was. Pick up anger or an old thought. I failed 1,000 times, probably 10,000 times. Just trust. Trust. If you're listening to this broadcast, if this, this sangha, this path is something you've dedicated your life to, it's a given that you will wake up. It's a given. So trust, go forward. Truly. Truly, don't judge yourself in any way if you feel like you made a mistake. When you judge yourself, it really slows things down. If you make a mistake, just admit honestly, okay, I dropped the ball there, but come on, this whole thing is a setup. We're all destined to wake up. Can you look humbly and honestly at your life and see, did I really make a mistake, or was I just having a human moment? It's funny because God makes us divine and human. And so many of us judge ourselves for being human. And it's not a fair judgment. It's not fair. It's not fair. So can you smile? Can you relax? And just know there'll be many more opportunities. And if it's happened once in you, even if you had a flash of insight, it's just a precursor to the real thing. In the end, you're not doing this path anyways. God is doing it in you as you, despite your human self. That's the good news. That's the good news. When you step into this third way of being, the ground of being, you realize, oh, everything was perfect, just as it was. You realize that Mara, all the pain, the confusion, the suffering, was the supreme intelligence, the compassion of the universe, helping you to grow into something greater. Doesn't seem that way in the beginning, though. It seems like hell in the beginning. Okay, here's a long email. Let me see if I can get through it quickly. Craig, for several days now, I've begun to notice that my emotions are different. Different in the sense that they are pretty much empty. I don't know how I feel about anything unless the feeling is right there in the moment. I was concerned with how I might love my children and my partner, but all that seems to be going along quite well for the most part. Beautiful. And so what she's describing here is this is what it's like when we step into the ground of being for the first time. Everything feels very empty. And by empty, it's good empty. There's a great freedom there. And the emotions just take care of themselves. And so you don't have to worry too much about, second guessing the awakening. Trust. Just trust it. I'm getting the sense that love is way deeper and more subtle than emotions. Yes, good. And maybe what I am experiencing is the emptying out or purifying of the emotional body, which I see as essential, as those emotions were tied to a limited center of being, or ego. Yes, this is what's happening. Either way, I feel like I've been to the edge of hell and back over the past few days. Quite a difference, from months of mountaintop flashy experiences where I'm seeing were beneficial to some degree as they helped reorient me to my heart, but otherwise can be detrimental to progress, so to speak. I'm also more acutely aware, moment by moment, if I'm operating or responding to life in an old ways, which reinforce the old center, or if I'm operating or responding from this deeper connection with Source and love. It's quite amazing. It's a quite amazing change for sure. And this is beautiful. And so this is what it's like, the further we progress on the path and mature, what you'll find is your human emotions, they'll kind of lose their charge, they'll lose their fire. The pushiness will fall out of them. And it will fall out of them naturally. When the Buddha spoke about emptiness, this is the realization of emptiness, that everything is empty, that the emotions aren't necessarily real. They're not true. And when you get to this stage, emotions, you can become quite emotionless, except for when you need to have emotions. And then you'll find they naturally flow through you. Now, of course, there's still a purification process, and this goes on for most people for the extent of their life. We're never done. We're never done. We live in an evolutionary world, and within the human body is every level of existence. From a living saint to a dinosaur is within us. And so these things will be emptied out. And so when you get to this stage in the journey, what you'll find is things will just start falling away. And there were times when, I would just be walking down the street and I would just feel something fall away. And it was almost like I would look behind me and say, what was that? I don't even know what it was that fell away, that disappeared. And it's beautiful. It's powerful. You begin to see that you are not the doer, that life is the doer. And life is doing spiritual awakening in you, as you. In you, as you. You don't have to do anything, but have just a general sense of humility and discernment in regards to your shadow or any aspect of your humanity that does act up, because that will come again. Will come again. And so you let God do her work in you. You let life wake up in you. And see that you don't have to do anything. The path is doing you. Awakening is living through you. And so I encourage you to trust. A lot of times when people are, especially with moms, they're worried they're not going to love their kids anymore. And this experience of true awakening, it's a movement of love, it's a movement of intelligence. God doesn't have the plan to make you not a mother, not love your children. That'd be the opposite of compassion. And so the big thing is, can you trust? Can you trust and let go? Trust and receive something greater. Okay, there's one last thing that's popped up here, and let me see if I can just read it here. Yes. So the big thing is for you all to trust your heart, to surrender to that which is greater, to surrender to that which is holy. All of us have a choice. The choice is to repeat the past or to step into that which is greater. And so I invite you all, I challenge you all to listen to your heart, to live from your truth, live from the highest. And let these meetings, when we come together each week, be a time to recommit to this path, to support each other, growing in love, growing in freedom. So this greater force, whether you call it the ground of being or whether you call it Christ consciousness, we invite this greater force to live through us, as us. This is our ongoing prayer. If you stumble, get up, forgive yourself for being human, and recommit to the path. And so nice to be here with you all. I do look forward to seeing many of you Wednesday night. From my heart to yours, that's a formal invitation. Join us for meditation if you can. And thank you all, those of you who support the Sangha with your donations. Deeply appreciated. Deeply appreciated. May peace be with you all. May you all have a wonderful evening. Good night.